Good evening. I'd like to call to order the November 5th Lake Washington School Board meeting. For our first action, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the November 5th agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director La Liberty that we approve the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And so tonight we will then move to our host school this evening, and I will let Dr. Stephen.
Thank you. Tonight our host school is Kirkland Middle School, and we're going to start off their presentation with a short video. All right, while we work on the video, we're going to skip to asking our beloved principal, Deborah McCarson, to come up, and Deborah is going to have a presentation about Kirkland Middle School.
Thank you. The principal at Kirkland Middle. This is my 39th year in this district. I can't think of any better place to be. So I promised to be quick today. There's some things we wanted to highlight. First of all, we are part of the Lake Washington Learning Community. We have approximately 615 students, and our feeder schools are Peter Kirk, Mark Twain, and Lakeview. The students at Twain get a choice between Rose Hill and Kirkland, so they can go either direction. Our native languages, you can see they include not quite as many as some schools do. We celebrate our diversity. Our SBA, our Smarter Balanced Assessments in math, we are ranging usually in 80 percentiles. Same thing for English and LA results. What we focused on in our continuous improvement planning were our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Hispanic and Latino students, and got good results. 80% proficient in reading, 88% in writing, 80% in math concepts and procedures, 78% problem solving and data analysis, and 84% in math, communication, and reasoning. That is what we focused on and will continue to. Here's what math looked like percentage-wise in level 4, 3, 2, and 1. And you can see the progress made over time. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is language arts. It's a percentage at each achievement level. And here's some of the things that we did to support closing that achievement gap. We have an ELL teacher. We also have trained all of our teachers in SIOP. We have a safety net support and 2 different co-teachings. So we have a 6th grade math teacher working with a safety net teacher in one classroom, and we have a special ed teacher working with an 8th grade LA teacher. Student aids. We have a learning center at our school, and we have the largest number of students that sign up for electives is to be a student aid to help our learning center students. We have Ketchup Cafe and Power Hour that are both supported by our PTSA. Ketchup Cafe is during lunchtime. Students can go in there and work on homework, get extra support, make up tests. Power Hour is after school 2 days a week. So kids can go in, do homework. They have the support of a math science teacher during that time. Those are some of the things we do to close our achievement gap. If you ask our students some of the things that they love most about Kirkland Middle, and you'll get a chance to hear from our ASB president shortly, Panther Time is our personalization time. It's at the end of the day, 4 days a week. We have peer mentors. Those are 7th and 8th graders that are specially trained, and they're matched up with 6th graders. So every 6th grader has a 7th or 8th grade mentor that they have throughout the year that do different activities with them. And then we have a leadership class. The photo you're looking at is one of the School-wide activities, we have cup stacking. And some of you who are here right now from Lake Washington probably remember our cup stacking. Math Olympiad. These are some of the activities that we had. I would like to thank Dr. Carlson for supporting us in our Math Olympiad, being a judge and scorer for the last, I don't know how many years, a number of years. Battle of the Books. Our librarian runs Battle of the Books. Kids read a set of books and then go to competitions in school, and then we have a final that goes through all of our middle schools. We have a wonderful music program, and I've got my fingers crossed that you'll be able to see that in the video. Athletics. In middle school, we're still no cut. If a student turns out for a sport in middle school, they will play. School plays. We have a PTSA that sponsors our school plays. We're doing Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in a few weeks, and then we do a Shakespeare play in the spring. So, Kirkland Middle School, our motto is expect the best. I'm going to turn it over to one of our best. Kuba Holchek is our ASB president, and he's going to tell you a few things about what he likes about Kirkland Middle School. Kuba.
Thank you, Ms. McCarson. Hello, everyone. My name is Kuba Holacek. I'm an 8th grader at Kirkland Middle School, and I'm the ASB president. And I'd like to tell you a couple of things that I absolutely love about Kirkland Middle School. So, flashback. When I was a little kid, I absolutely loved to learn, whether it be history, reading, math, science, you name it, I wanted to learn it. And I feel like at KIMS, that love of learning has been very nurtured. And part of that is the phenomenal faculty and staff. So I know we have some here, Mr. Hakes, hi. But not only are the staff just phenomenal teachers, but they're very involved with the students out of school too. I mean, a lot of our staff runs like after school programs like athletics, well, band isn't really after school, but band. So another flashback, 2 years and 7 inches roughly ago, I was a tiny 6th grader beginning my time at Kirkland, and I love to be involved, and I want to do a lot of activities at Kirkland. And a year later, in 7th grade, when I got my schedule, I knew every single teacher on that list because they're so involved in the students' futures. So another thing that I love about Kirkland Middle School is they're a diverse environment of friendly, helpful people. Everybody knows everyone, and to be honest, it's more like a family than it is a school. And lastly, the education is just phenomenal. I'm almost like speechless because all of our teachers are they make the learning fly off the pages. They make me excited to come to school every day because I know that I'm going to learn something new and it's going to help me out later in life. So all in all, I'm proud to be a Panther. Thank you.
And he did that all himself. That's the first time I'd heard that. Is the video ready to go?
It will be momentarily.
Okay. All right. We'll close out.
Jazz band starts at 7 a.m. every morning, and it's pretty early. We're all kind of half awake. But it's always worth it because it's so much fun. Everyone's really nice, and we always have really funny conversations, and it's just fun to make music.
Today I have the pleasure of visiting Kirkland Middle School, which has a student population of just over 700 students. We have a great learning space here, a great place for people to come and educate our students every day.
Let's say I don't like this and I want to get rid of that placement. All my classes are about engineering something. I'm trying to really get them to believe they can tinker with something, break it, fix it. The good news is all our classes can come together. We need to reorder your rooms, so rename this one. So we have 4 game design classes. Of course, we're introducing them to the basics of game design and programming. So it's great because their interest level is so high in developing games. It's a great introduction to coding. It has a real purpose for them, and they're really interested in making it work.
The variety and diversity of the activities and the classes that they're able to take here are unbelievable and phenomenal. I think the fact that the school feels more like they've really created more of a team environment. I feel like we're almost a family in a way. And for my kids too, they both love school. So as a parent, I mean, to have your kids love coming to school is a huge win.
Book club and the Battle of the Books.
What's the best part of the book so far?
The book is Warcross, and I would prefer it to all readers.
What about the draft? Were you surprised by the draft?
We're halfway through the book, so now we're talking about the book and doing like activities.
We have so many great readers here at Kirkland. We participate in Battle of the Books, which is a middle school program. And this year we probably had 70 students who were interested in participating. It's because kids actually still love the physical copy of the book and to sit down.
Middle school is a great time where students are becoming more and more independent. They're getting prepared for high school, and they're just really figuring out a lot of what they want to be in life. What are you most proud about as the principal?
I'm most proud about the success of our kids. We have a fabulous staff, and our community is really rallied around everything that we do here with our kids, and they're very supportive. Our facility just really supports everything, and we've got areas where kids can go out and collaborate, places for teachers to have conversations with parents. It's just a nice space, and it's open, and it's light, and it gives them an opportunity to know our kids well.
I'm so proud of our leadership program and how it has grown and developed over the last couple of years. Our kids do so much. They work on developing their character. They work to serve their peers.
We will be creating care packages and writing letters to veterans, as well as a PowerPoint and multiple banners, just encouraging students to get out there and do what they can for their community. And I think that really is a big thing at Kirkland Middle School, that they're out there and serving their community.
We have a lot of clubs here at Kirkland Middle School, like Builders Club, Honor Society. Those are academic clubs and community service clubs. So they serve for the school, they serve for the community.
You guys are finishing up your Finch Peak data first.
What's most important, your academics or winning on the field or in the gym?
I would say academics first.
We have our peer mentor program that we match up 7th and 8th graders with our incoming 6th graders to help them with that transition and help them bridge that gap between the younger kids and the older kids.
I think the kids really benefit from like interacting with their peers, and now I know that when I see them in the hallway, I go say hi, and I know that a lot of other people do too, and they feel like part of the school and not just like the outsiders, which I really like.
We are looking at Washington State history, and as we're looking at westward expansion, and we're looking at settlement, and we're looking at Native American tribes, we're looking at these topics from multiple perspectives. So we're looking at it from the perspective of the explorers and the settlers. We're looking at it from a historian's perspective, which would be, hopefully unbiased. And then right now we're looking at it from a Native American perspective and going through and listening to interviews of members from various Northwest tribes and kind of their retelling of these experiences and what it felt like for them. So that's one thing that I think is really critical in our classes, is that they're learning to explore things from multiple perspectives and see things from different angles and really just think critically.
Well, thank you very much. That was fabulous. Love the jazz band. My son was in when they started at 6:30 in the morning, so I'm glad to hear it's at 7. So we will now have the recognition of our national semifinalists and commended scholars, and we have 3 schools here tonight, I believe.
Yes, tonight we have the distinct honor of recognizing our national semifinalists and commended scholars from International Community School, or known as ICS, East Lake High School, and Lake Washington High School. So I would now like to ask Mike O'Donnell, Assistant Principal from ICS, to step forward, followed by Chris Beatty from East Lake High School, and then Christina Thomas from Lake Washington High School. So Mike, take it away.
Board of Directors, thank you, and Dr. Saban, thank you. It's a distinct honor to stand up here and pretend like I had anything to do with those kids' high energy. I'm new to the school and new to Lake Washington District, but very happy so far. When you look at the numbers of what the National Scholarship Program does, is 1.6 million seniors. Their scores on the PSAT, those who took the PSAT, are evaluated. In Washington State, half of 1% of the top scores are classified as commended scholars or national semifinalists. We have 38 seniors in our class, a very small school. Of those, tonight, I'm going to recognize 11 from our school. So it's pretty amazing when you think about the numbers. Our commended scholars include Andrew Balashek. And if you're here, please come on up. Eddie Fu. Alina Harry. Detlef Nosh. Mackenzie Lauren. Allison Lee. Jack Lee. Elif Usta. That's right. And our semifinalists include Theo Gregerson. There's Theo. Kira Gormley. And Daniel Chen.
Great. What we would like to do, if the seniors would be willing, is typically we like to ask to give us a little insight for a few things. One is where you're interested in going to school, and a favorite experience, and maybe what you might be planning to study, or what you're planning to do after graduation would probably be a better way to put it. Be that college, be that a gap year, be it the military, be it a job, whatever. And then the other option then is what was a favorite school experience, a favorite teacher, something that you can share with us.
You've got about a minute each.
All right. So after high school, I'm planning to go to hopefully UW or USC for a computer science degree. And one of my favorite experiences at ICS and with a teacher would probably be staying after school with Mr. Gibson to get help with physics or Algebra 2. And yeah, the teachers are really great.
Hi, so probably post-high school, I'm probably looking to go to UW, maybe somewhere on the East Coast. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Probably engineering undeclared. Again, figure it out later. In terms of favorite experience at ICS, I would just say sort of everything that we've been through put together. Like, it sounds super bad because I don't have a single moment, but it's also so hard to pick just because the 37 other seniors that have been with me have been with for at least 4 years, and so that sort of journey has sort of culminated into one beautiful memory in my mind.
Hi, my name is Alina. For the future, I'm definitely looking towards going to college either in Washington or in California. And basically what everybody else said, one of my favorite memories about ICS is definitely being able to grow up with the same people. I out of everybody here, I remember when everybody except for Kira was probably like here. But definitely every single memory from camp in 7th grade all the way until camp in senior year with these guys.
My name is Theo. Dream post-high school outlook would probably be attending a school on the East Coast. MIT is the hope, but hard to get in. So we'll see how that goes. I plan to study computer science. That's my main interest right now. And my favorite memory from ICS is probably working as a counselor in the underclassmen camp.
Hi, my name is Kira Gormley, and post-high school, I definitely plan on attending university. Don't know where yet, but UW is great. Looking at a few schools in California and some in Boston. I'd really like to study environmental engineering and sustainable energy right now, and maybe business as well. And probably my favorite memory at ICS, or memories, would be traveling, the amazing travel opportunities we've had through competitions such as FBLA and NHD and Focus Week trips as well.
My name's Daniel. Yeah, just like everyone else, I'm hoping to go to college either on the East Coast or on the West Coast, either here or in California. I'm hoping to study either business or economics. And my favorite memory at ICS, sort of like Kira mentioned, there's a club called FBLA, and a lot of us have been able to travel together even like across the country, so it's been really great.
Thank you, scholars. And what we'd like to ask each group to do is just to go out into the lobby, and we'll have a photo for your school taken. Thank you. We're proud of you. Next, Eastlake. And just for the sake of time, we'll clap silently for everybody, and let's clap for everybody at the conclusion after Mr. Beatty calls all of the names and the students come forward, and then we'll give them a big round of applause.
So I'm Chris Beatty. I'm the proud principal of Eastlake High School. I'm actually going to ask the Eastlake students present tonight just to come on up front right now. So come on up. So we are here to recognize 16 Eastlake students who are Commended Scholars or National Merit semifinalists. And to just get started, I want to tell them how proud we are of them, and not just because of their impressive scores on the PSAT, but also because of the what fantastic young men and women they've become, all of their contributions to Eastlake High School that are much bigger than just taking tests, and then how you just represent Eastlake High School and make us proud. And so I'm going to hand you the microphone and let you introduce yourself and answer the questions that we've shared earlier tonight. Here you are.
And actually, minor modification. This is your chance. If there's a teacher who mattered in your last 12 years of your schooling, thank them. Or principal. We'll allow that. Anyway.
Hi, I'm Colby Sampson. I'm hoping to apply to UW Seattle or UW Bothell to stay in-state and study. And I'm hoping to study either computer science and mathematics and hopefully specialize in cybersecurity. And I guess a big educational experience I've had is working with my computer science teachers, with one of our former teachers, Miss Nishiwaki, and our current computer science teacher, Mr. Barrett, in completing computer science programs, making interactive games. It's been just like so interactive and fun. It's built a lot of my interest in computer science and like built what I want to study on in college and later on.
Hi, my name's Lillian Peel. For college, don't know where I want to go yet, but I do know that I want to study either journalism or communications, or both. And I guess an educational experience that was really great for me was my AP World History class in sophomore year. My teacher, Mr. Menenberg, was really, he made the class really fun, and it was just a really good experience.
Hi, my name is Ellie Talius, and I'll be attending Stanford next year, hoping to major in computational biology. And one of my favorite memories of high school has been having the same math teacher for 3 years. I've had Miss Everson, freshman, sophomore, and then this year, and she just makes math so much fun, and she's just such a sweet person.
Hi, my name is Chris Hom,
And I went to attend Columbia University in the city of New York, or the United States Naval Academy. And I went to major in economics or computer science. And my favorite educational experience has probably been AP World with Mr. Menenberg.
Hi, my name is Sanjana Sridhar, and I hopefully want to go to MIT or UW for computer science, and I want to major in computer science or with environmental engineering. And my favorite educational experience was probably BC Calc with Everson or AP World with Menenberg.
Hi, my name is Craig Deng, and for college I would like to go to either Yale University or the University of Chicago, and then after that I would like to go to law school somewhere. And my favorite educational experience is 9th grade English with Ms. Devedal. I think the class was just really enthusiastic about learning, and Ms. Devedal was very passionate about what she taught.
Hi, my name is Reina Wan. I don't really know where I want to go to college yet, but I am currently leaning towards majoring in computer science. My favorite class so far at Eastlake has been probably AP US History with Mr. Norris, because it was a very fun class where it was very engaging and we all got a lot of chances to express ourselves.
Great job, students. We're so proud of you, and it's nice to hear about those memories of your teachers. We are so appreciative of what they do every day in our classrooms, that we have such wonderful ways of celebrating that with the accomplishments that our students have. So we'll ask you to head out to the lobby for a photo. I was distracted. And finally, Lake Washington High School.
Thank you. I'm going to follow Eastlake's suit, and if I can have my Lake Washington High School students come on up. It's especially nice to hear about Kirkland Middle since there are feeders, so saw some real potential there, and real excited to welcome those Panthers here in the next few years. I am going to have them introduce themselves as well and share the prompts that you were given.
Howdy, y'all. Malcolm Munsell. I'm interested in marine biology. Colleges I'm planning to go to, I'm looking at UW here in Seattle, a couple places on the East Coast, and the Claremont Colleges down in California. My favorite educational memory at LWHS has to be in AP US History, taught by Mr. Hansen, when I was a prosecuting attorney for a mock trial, and the defense attorney didn't show up, so Mr. Hansen himself went up against me as the defense attorney, and I won! Oh, wait, sorry, also, quick shout out to Miss Myrie at Kirkland, who taught the advanced math class at Kirkland Middle School. She's amazing also.
I'm Taryn Chisholm. I am planning to go to either UW or somewhere in California, most likely Santa Clara. I like that school, and I'd like to go into environmental engineering or civil engineering. And some of my inspirational teachers start with Mr. Hakes here, 5th grade. I had him back at Ben Rush Elementary School. And then I've had some good teachers at LW that have really shown me that they care about their students more than just grades and tests. But one of those teachers especially was Mr. Terich last year in English, and he really pushed us to dig deep into books and look at English from a different perspective.
Right. So my name is Matthew Maffeo, and for college, I'm intending to go to either UW or, like a lot of other people, UWs or somewhere in California. I'm also applying to MIT. And so I'm intending to study engineering. And one teacher who's been really special to me is Mrs. Serjani. And I had her for math in 9th and 10th grade and as a robotics mentor in 11th and 12th. And so, yeah, she's just been a really great teacher and mentor for me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gino Chai, and I would like to study computer science or engineering at, believe it or not, UW, like a lot of the other people here. Yeah, one teacher that I particularly remember is our orchestra teacher, Mrs. Merwine. She's no longer a part of the district, but she really pulled together our music department, especially for the orchestral program. And also, she pulled more than a couple strings to get us to Disneyland in my sophomore year.
My name's Andrew Buckingham. I'm hoping to study electrical engineering after high school. And I would say one of my favorite high school experiences has been participating on the tennis team. I've been a member all 4 years of high school, everything from JV to varsity, and just the people I've met there, the experiences that I've had through that have been, I think, some that I'll probably carry with me through the rest of my life. Shout out to Coach Stalker. Thanks for all the life lessons.
I'm Oliver. I'm applying to a bunch of schools all over the country and to study physics. And a really important educational experience for me would be, again, I want to shout out Ms. Serjani just because she has such a refreshing enthusiasm for math. And I thought it meant a lot to me to be in her class.
I'm Thomas Riffle, and I'm going to seem like a bit of a copycat now, thanks Oliver, but I also want to study physics, and so I'm applying to MIT and Caltech, so, pretty low chances of getting in, but hey, if I could apply to both, I'll probably get into, UW, so it's fine, it'll work out. And so, anyway, I think my favorite educational experience would have to be my 10th and now 12th grade teacher, Mr. Dawson, who's taught me history, and I like him, he's funny, he talks about aliens, and it's a good time all around.
Thomas is our National Merit semifinalist, and these guys are all commended scholars.
Thank you, everybody. We'd also like to say thank you to the family members and supporters who are in our audience tonight. We know how big of a role you play in supporting our students and helping them get to bed at night and remember to take things with them in the mornings and sometimes run things to school to them when they forget, and everything that goes into supporting our students. So thank you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much as you head out for the picture. As we will be moving into public comment, no one has signed up. So at this point, knowing that students have a very busy time, and so please feel free if you would need to leave the meeting, or you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. If you'd like to see what we do at the next half, you can also watch us on TV. So there are a few options.
Later, yes.
So thank you very much for coming.
And the student from Eastlake that wants to go into journalism, I'd highly recommend University of Oklahoma.
Okay, and since we do not have any public comment this evening, is there anybody in the audience who would like to do public comment and did not sign up? No. Okay, seeing no one, we were going to go ahead and move to the consent agenda. So I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Stewart. So, Dr. Staven, could you please hold the board?
Yes. Cassandra?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Siri?
Yes. So, Dr. Staven, could you do us a favor and summarize the donations and the generous support of our community?
I will. Once again this month, we have a number of donations to our district, many from our generous PTSAs, some from community groups, the Sammamish Kiwanis Foundation, Wolves Football Association, Eastlake Girls Soccer, and the Lake Washington High School Dance Team Booster Club. And let me just scroll to make sure I didn't miss any others. Juanita Schools Foundation, otherwise many from our generous PTSAs. I would point out one additional one from the Madeline Lopes, Widmer, and Gigi McCaig. That must be an individual, a couple of people donating to Sandburg Elementary. But the grand total for all of these donations that come to support all of our different programs at our schools is in the amount of $159,073.88. So we are very appreciative to the people who support our schools in this way.
Yeah, thank you very much. The enhancement that provides and the opportunities for all our students is fabulous in providing that. All right, so our next item is on the non-consent agenda, and it'll be for the monitoring report, the ends result 2 mathematics. So Dr. Staven.
Yes, and for that report, I will ask Mike Van Orden to step forward and share some of his information with us.
we go. All right, so as you know, this is the second of our monitoring end result remonitoring reports for this year. And so we'll be talking about mathematics tonight. Just as a reminder, when we look at our end result reports, we're thinking about content knowledge in our academic program. So in this area, we're looking specifically at our mathematical reasoning and our academic program that supports the students' progress towards mathematical reasoning. We also want to make sure we're thinking about how we connect our end results to our executive limitations and our academic program. So we look at very specific end results to tell us that we're on track for mathematics. So as with all of our end results report, we want to just give a quick overview of the programs that help students to achieve those results. And so at the elementary level for mathematics, our students receive anywhere from 360 to 420 minutes per week of instruction, partly based on grade level. And there is a core curriculum that we have in all of our schools, Envision Math, as well as supplemental resources that help provide supports for teachers as they deliver that curriculum. As you may recall, our last adoption was in 2011, so we're about halfway through our adoption cycle right now. At the middle school level, 50 minutes roughly per day in mathematics instruction. Depending on where students enter mathematics in middle school, that might be math 6th, 7th, and 8th, or algebra and geometry. So students as early as 7th grade can begin taking algebra, take geometry as 8th graders, or even take algebra as 8th graders as well. We had a recent math adoption there and adopted new materials for middle school, and then following that, we also adopted high school materials, and because algebra and geometry are high school courses, those materials are part of, and that curriculum is part of the program that's delivered in our middle school settings. We also have some really wonderful resources that came with those adoptions. So as we shared during our adoption, there's an adaptive computer-based math supplement that goes with our middle school math program that helps students who need additional supports, both in terms of whether they're struggling with academics, in math, or they're outpacing math. And then finally, at the high school level, we have core courses that are required for graduation. That's algebra and geometry. And then we have a whole series of courses that students can take past that. And in a moment, I'll show you our math pathways. And as with elementary and middle school, we want to make sure our students have access to core curriculum. So we provide materials and supports for our teachers to deliver content that's aligned with our state standards. And so, as you may recall, we had a recent math adoption in 2017 with new algebra and geometry materials. We also, at that time, looked at our advanced placement courses and adopted some additional materials as well. Again, just as a reminder, a refresher of the math sequence that our students have access to as they enter through into this middle school and high school programs. All of our students take 6th grade mathematics, with the exception of our highly capable program, and then we also have opportunities for students to enter math course sequences at different points. So they can move through a 6, 7, 8 into algebra, or they can place into algebra, geometry in middle school, and then move into a series of courses. You'll notice all of those lead to math options for students all the way through their senior year, which is important, we know, to have options for students. And after they move out of Algebra 2, those courses become elective, so they have choices on which courses they do take. So the main bulk of our report then is to talk about how our students are performing in mathematics as a whole, and as well as by subgroups and for each grade level. So similar to the way we shared with our ER report for English language arts and literacy, we broke the results down into primary grades K-3, intermediate grades 5 through 8, and then high school. So we want to talk a little bit about how we're interpreting the policy here. And so when we look at our policy interpretation, we say that we want to make sure that achievement is interpreted as demonstration of skills and knowledge through grade 3, and that the program that we're looking at and that we're measuring is based on the Common Core state standards, and that curriculum supports that. And so, as you know, we set targets for those end results of 95%, and we have specific measures that we use. In the case of elementary, primary, we're looking at 95% demonstrating readiness on the WCAGS assessment, as well as 95% of third graders meeting or exceeding state standards in math is demonstrated through the Smarter Balanced assessment. And we also know that we want to be thinking about what is sufficient progress, because we're also thinking about how we know whether or not kids are moving through and demonstrating performance gains over time. And so we would interpret the policy to be saying that 85% or more students demonstrating standard on the WAKIDS, as well as Smarter Balanced Assessment, tells us that we're making sufficient progress towards that target of 95%. We also look at performance trends and want to make sure that there's not declines over time. So depending on the assessment, we have multiple years of data to look at to tell us whether or not students are making progress. So we also, as we're thinking about those targets and we're thinking about performance, we want to be thinking about growth over time. And we want to think about when we put in place any kind of initiative or strategy to improve student performance, we have to think about that as a multi-year effort. We don't put in place a strategy and then see instantly changes in performance. We see them over time as we get better at implementation, as we look at our data, as we think about providing supports for over time for kids. So our specific data, as we look at students entering kindergarten, and remember this is entering kindergarten, so we want to be thinking about this potentially as a measure of our preschool, but also just a baseline to think about as students move into other grades, how does their performance kind of connect back? And also remembering that these are different measures, it gives us just kind of a relative comparison. So the percent of our kindergartners entering kindergarten ready for math is right around 85 to 87, 86, 87%. And so again, that's kind of a starting point as we start to think about third grade. And so in third grade, our students are maintaining about 80% meeting or exceeding standards, so that's a few years later. And when we think about our state ranking, we're third this year for the 49 largest districts in the state. And one thing, just to give some perspective on this, when we think about our programs, and we think about them through kind of a tiered level of support or tiered layers of support, when we see results that are around 80, 85% of our students meeting standard, we have some assurance that our core programs for the majority of our kids are kind of in place. And what we want to be thinking about then is individual students or groups of students that might need access to the programs, but it also tells us that it's not, we don't need to get rid of our curriculum or radically rethink about our curriculum. We need to think about more supports for groups of students or individual students. So that 80% is kind of a good threshold for us to be thinking about how do we approach the supports that we're going to be providing for our students over time. We do know, and this is what I was referring to, is that for some groups of students, we aren't hitting those marks. And so then it falls on us to think about what are the strategies we're going to do to make sure that they can have success, whether that's intervention, whether that's thinking about how students are accessing that core curriculum, whether it's thinking about our delivery approaches and all of that. And so we'll talk about some of those strategies that we have towards the end of the presentation, but specifically let's look at some of the data for each of those groups. So we do know, and similar to our performance for English language arts, we have gaps that are very similar in terms of groups and relations to one another. Our Asian students are performing higher than other ethnic groups, and that we have performance gaps specifically for our Hispanic, Latino, and Black African American students that persist over time, and they're not changing significantly for our third graders. We also know that our students are ranking kind of in the top tier of students or districts around the state. As I mentioned, we have performance gaps also for groups including special education. Again, those are staying relatively similar over time. And our students in third grade rank 6th among the 49 largest districts in the state. You also asked at our last meeting to look at our performance by disability category. We're also, Tim and his team are looking at LRE. It wasn't quite ready for us to share at this meeting. We're still looking at that for future end result reports. But this does allow us to be a little bit more specific about groups of students by disability category. We're still kind of thinking about how do we interpret these and what would be the implications for approaches and strategies, knowing that for any one of these, there's a range of skills and abilities and talents that students bring to the table. And so to say that any one disability category defines any one student in that group is a challenge for us. We want to think about kids along a continuum. And so, again, we're still kind of thinking about what would be the best way to approach that. But it is telling in some ways to look at differences by groups. As we've shared in past, our performance for our EL students, similar to English language arts, that students who are in the program and then exit are performing at or near, in some cases you'll see in later grades even better than students who were never in EL. And then we have students who are in EL, who are still in EL as we would imagine because of language challenges, aren't performing as well as their peers, but our goal is to over time have them have language acquisition that will help them to be successful on assessments. And so even though this is a mathematics assessment, we know that language is a fundamental component of mathematics in terms of reading problems and understanding them and expressing yourself. And so that's probably more a function of language than it is mathematical reasoning, though that's something we can dig into. We also know we have persistent achievement gaps for students based on income. And this is an area I think I want to point out where in other groups we were performing kind of in that top tier of districts around the state. For whatever reason, that's not the case for low-income students. We're 23rd of the 49 largest districts. And so that's something that we need to look at more closely because you'd expect we would have a similar trend or a similar pattern in all of our groups. And so there's something that's standing out here. It's calling out a need for attention. Intermediate mathematics, as we mentioned, would be grades 5 through 8. And so here we're looking at, similar to elementary school, Common Core State Standards is kind of our what we're measuring against. And we're thinking about programs as we start to transition students into upper grades and the complexity of math becomes, I don't want to say more challenging, but there is a greater level of complexity to it. And so we're thinking about how do we prepare students for that and what are the supports they may need. So as we shared with our primary, we're using those 95% targets and interpreting 85% as sufficient evidence towards accomplishment of the end result, as well as looking for that positive trend, or at least we're not seeing a decline in performance over time. And as I mentioned before, we're also thinking about how do we put systems in place that over time will make changes to the performance of our students. And so that's not a 1 year or 2 year process, that's a multi-year process. And we'll talk about those strategies again at the end. So overall, our students are performing relatively well in grades 5 and 8. Our students rank second among the 49 largest districts. And so again, compare that to some of our other data that we shared earlier. Definitely in the top tier. And as we shared before, we want to go through some of the performance gaps that we're seeing or achievement gaps we're seeing for some of our other groups. So similar trends hold true for performance by race and ethnicity at grades 5 and 8. And if we look at our performance in relation to other schools and districts in the state, our rankings are 11th for our 5th grade students and 7th for our 8th grade students. We have similar performance gaps for special education. So you'll see that trend holding through grades 5, elementary, 3 through high school. Again, though, this is an interesting area. Sometimes when we think about how do we look for ways to improve our programs, we think about, well, what are other schools and districts doing that would be worth us going and looking at? And when we look at that, we're number 1 for special education performance in grade 5 and number 2 and 8. So here we're needing to think about probably programs and services that maybe aren't being delivered at other schools and districts. Similar, we pulled our data for performance by disability category. Important to note, and I don't think I mentioned it in the 3rd grade results, whenever we have a number of students that's below 10, we mask that data, particularly in public meetings, because with a number that low, you could potentially identify students at an individual school or schools. But again, you see some patterns here as well. Again, we want to be thinking about that N, but for our numbers that are a little bit larger, there's some information that we can dig into and see if there might be some program adjustments or things that we could do in schools that might better meet the needs of students based on their disability. And so this is data that we can share with our special education and teaching and learning and intervention departments to help think about how might we change our programs to do a better job of meeting students' needs.
And communication disorder, or SLD, which of those does dyslexia fall under?
SLD typically.
It's SLD, yeah. Okay.
So when we look at our performance, though, we still see gaps. So we're top performing district in the state, and at the same time we see pretty significant gaps for students who are in special education. Again, this is all of the students, so as we were sharing before, you can break that down by groups, and some groups are performing a little bit higher than others, but there's still a pretty significant gap regardless. EL, yes? Yeah.
Quick question, with the performance being high in the state, but yet having a significant gap, where are we looking out of state for a better solution?
It's more because we did, remember we talked to the district down in Oregon?
Right.
What we're seeing there, and I think Jane's been asking us to think about what are multiple measures.
Mhm.
So inclusion rates are one of the things we're looking at. When we look at our inclusion rates compared to other districts, they may be a little bit lower, and so that's an area where we can look at, because with inclusion comes lots of benefits in addition to academic performance. We're also, as I mentioned at our special education study session, working with the Swift Center, who contracts with schools and districts and states, and so they're giving us feedback around strategies that we can use that are actually based on performance of really high-performing schools and districts, and shared some just today at a conference I was at. They're seeing some really great gains as a result of the efforts that they're putting in place. I mentioned EL, so similar pattern here. This is an area, again, I think even for special education, there's some takeaways here. When we see the types of supports that are put in place in our EL program, there's probably some carryover and strategies that can apply to other groups of students. And so that'll be something we are doing as we think about co-teaching and coaching models and in-school support models. And we're also thinking, and Kelly has shared this when she's presented, we're thinking about those students who are in EL programs for long periods of time, or who enter our system in multiple grades, either in elementary school, middle, or high school, and what are the needs and supports that we have to put in place for them. Again, this is, we're getting a little bit, actually probably not a lot better, but slightly better, but you see this same pattern. And so this is something that's unique, I think, to Lake Washington, is we have performance for other subgroups that are near the top of the state. And again, here, this same pattern holds true, 16th and 24th for grades 5 and 8. So that's an area of, when you're looking for those things that stand out and indicate that there's a need to look deeper, this is definitely one of those areas.
Where are we looking for the low-income examples?
I think this would be a perfect example of where you might want to use other districts that are achieving. So looking at those top-performing districts and seeing what are the things that are in place for low-income students in your district. And so we know that there are other. We can look at that data that Tim's pulled and say, okay, what are the top 1, 2, 3 first, second, and third ranked school districts, and then ask them. My sense is there's probably more of a district-wide focus or school-wide focus, and probably resources that are brought to bear as you have more students that are living in low-income households, but that doesn't mean that those strategies could not be applied to our district as well. We also, again, as we get into the older grades now, have cohort data that we can look at, and so for grades 5 and 8, for low income, our cohort data for the class of 2022 is fairly flat, and so that's something we want to keep an eye on. Moving to high school, we're looking here at how do we prepare our students for those post-secondary pathways. So that's college, career, post-secondary education opportunities. And so we are also thinking about the courses that are required, algebra and geometry, and courses that align with students' high school and beyond plan that does prepare them for that post-secondary opportunity. We have set our 95% targets. Here we're looking at the percent of students who are earning full credit in mathematics and the percent of students who are meeting or exceeding standard on the state assessment. We are, I think there was a request last time to look at that grades for the students who are receiving credit. That's something we're still working on. We think we should have something for you by our science report, but we're also pulling that information. So the question last time is, okay, they earn credit, but we know that could be a D or higher. So we're looking at students that earn a C or higher, and we should be able to get you that information. In this report, it's not available. As we mentioned, we're looking at that sufficient evidence, and so here we're looking at 85% target for credit and 85% for demonstration of performance on the Smarter Balanced. So looking specifically at the data, again, 95% of our ninth graders, and this begs the question, okay, so why the difference between the earning credit and the meeting or exceeding standard? That calls into question. I think there's some things to unpack there, so grades is one of them, but also thinking about an assessment as a measure in one point in time, at one point in time, and a grade reflects a whole year or at least a semester's worth of content that incorporates content knowledge, application of skills and knowledge, persistence in getting work done over time. So there's lots that's up to unpack in a grade that isn't reflected in a single test score. But we also do want to make sure that our grades reflect our students' achievement level.
The question I would have for the SBA that they're doing, this is algebra and some geometry, correct, within that test? So the challenge might be that the full math credit really isn't a good reflection, and so we'd actually be better looking at how many of our ninth graders completed algebra.
Right.
In that frame, or eighth grade. I know people are doing different ones. And then the other would be possibly 10th grade with geometry. Just to give us an idea, are we getting kids to that point where they need to be prior? And knowing that algebra is such a gateway math to so many other sciences and different things, it's sort of a key one to be able to have done by ninth grade as the latest.
Yeah. I would add to that there are algebra standards embedded in grades 6 through 10. So, and they actually start as early as middle school, as I was mentioning. So, that's a function too of how are they doing in the middle school, and that might be something we're considering. What I've been reading about and learning about is that it's not so much a function of what grade they take algebra, but they have algebra either before the assessment or before they get out of high school. So whether that's 7th grade or 9th grade, it's more important they take algebra and they do well in it.
Right. So my question would be that at 9th grade, how many passed regardless
Correct.
if it was 7th or 8th or 9th? So it'd be a cumulative thing. Is that sort of a marker to be paying attention of how are they well prepared to hit then the rigor of the sciences that will hit in the different pieces? You can't do chemistry without a solid algebra background. So
yeah, and that would be the grade where we'd expect students to have completed. Correct. So similar to our elementary and middle school, similar gaps in performance. Though those gaps aren't quite as severe as they are for achievement when we look at our students completing or earning credit. And remember that we're looking at a new assessment requirement, so we don't have the end-of-course exams anymore, and so we don't have that multiple years worth of data. But we do see that there's still some pretty significant gaps. So, for example, if you look at our Black African American students, 37.1%, Hispanic students, 46%. Those are areas that are calling for attention. Even with the N there, that's a pretty significant gap with 35 students. But when we look at our other rates, we have enough students to say, yeah, that's something that's worth us considering. We also are looking at our credit for special education, so 84%. Still, though, there's 10% there, so something we have to be thinking about. And I'm looking at the percentage of students who are meeting standard, 19.5. So that's calling for attention. And so when we talk about some of the strategies, one of the things we're looking at is, are kids getting access to the content? So if we're thinking about algebra, for example, are they getting access to the algebra content they need? Or are our services such that they're getting pulled from programs or not getting access to programs? So again, we pulled our disability category data. Again, we're still trying to figure out, we're looking for trends and patterns and meaning here, but we did want to get that, share that with you. We'll be working closely with our special education department to think about what might we do differently as a result of what we're seeing here. Our EL program, this is interesting. Again, we have pretty solid performance that's comparable for students who have exited the program. And remember, these are students who are exit that we track over 4 years. And we do see that our performance, again, 75.2 versus that 73%. That just calls out some really successful programs that we have in place. And then when we look at our low-income households, again, there's a gap there to think about. And when we look at the percent of students who are meeting standard, that's something that we need to attend to. So all of this begs the question, what are you doing to address this? And we had the same conversation with our end result report for English Language Arts. And just I want to put this in some context. When we're thinking about what's our approach to providing supports for kids, we're really thinking about it on multiple tiers, right? So we're thinking about, do kids have access to the core curriculum? Because if they don't get access to the core curriculum and then we're assessing them on using measures that are related to the core curriculum, it just makes sense that they wouldn't perform well. So that's an area we're thinking about. And sometimes that access to core curriculum is a function of whether or not that curriculum is doing the right job. Is it the right curriculum? And I think when we look at our overall data, it points to, yeah, curriculum's meeting the needs of many of our students. So then we have to think about students who maybe struggle. How are they accessing it? And then we also have to think about, what do we do even when the core curriculum is in place for those students and they do have access to it, what are the supports that come in place, the interventions, the strategies, and how do we know when kids need those? And then we also have to think about the overall school climate and culture. So those are the kind of the ways we're thinking about providing supports for kids. So when we're thinking about strategies that are currently in place and that we are seeing some success with, one of those areas is our credit recovery. So we know that for some students, maybe there's attendance issues and we're finally getting them to school and they're behind in credits. We have credit recovery during the school year and during the summer that allows kids to get back on track. We also know, as I mentioned, for some students that core curriculum is not enough and they need additional supports. And so we have supplemental math curriculum that we're putting in place and that we have in place for students who need more. So getting good access to core curriculum plus additional supports really makes a difference. And then that use of instructional technology in math at elementary and secondary. We're looking at supplemental digital programs for our elementary schools that are really well aligned with our curriculum and with assessments that we're looking at putting in place, and then similar for secondary. Going back to that concept of access to core curriculum, co-teaching, as we've shared, is an area where we see we can get kids into that core curriculum and provide supports for them in a general education setting so that they're not being pulled out and not getting access to the curriculum. And the individual supports they need are provided with 2 teachers instead of 1. That also works for our EL programs, and so we are in the process of scaling that up, providing training for teachers, adding more classrooms and more teachers who are equipped to co-teach well in more of our schools. We also are looking at summer school because sometimes kids need more time. And preschool, we talked about that earlier, is how important that is for setting the stage.
Mike, a quick question. With the low-income students and the underperformance in these areas, are we looking at, especially the high school students, not so much the younger ones, but the high school students, as to how many of them have after-school jobs and how we might be able to look into how we can support them in ways that will, take into account all their off hours are not going to be able to accommodate the homework, and how we might be able to supplement that during the daytime. And to be quite frank, also, a lot of those kids who may not have jobs, they may also have supervision duties of younger siblings because the parents are working 2 or 3 jobs. Yeah. And so I think we need to look and see what the impact of their out-of-class hours are and really the culture they're living in as to what might be having an impact on those. I mean, if you come home at 11 o'clock at night after working for an additional 6 hours after school, algebra homework is going to be more daunting than it was for for the rest of us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's data we could collect pretty easily, I think. The other thing that we wanted to share is we're thinking about, as I mentioned, we want to make sure kids have access to that really solid core curriculum and supplemental supports. When we're thinking about instruction, we're also thinking about the overall sense of belonging and connectedness to the school. And so we're thinking about culturally responsive teaching that has embedded really solid instructional strategies and that also takes students where they are and kind of honors and values them. So when we think about all of the different languages and cultural backgrounds and skills that students come to our schools with, as we think about that from an instructional lens, we think about how do we adjust our strategies. And so One of the strategies that's kind of embedded in this larger idea of culturally responsive teaching is this sheltered instruction observation protocol that thinks about language and thinks about how do we connect kids to school, how do we put kids together and partner them, how do we make the content really accessible. That's a strategy that will allow our students to be included in the school community and to learn more effectively. And so that's an important element that we're considering. That is something where all of our teachers this year are receiving training around that, and we're providing support as well. So those are strategies that are in place that we're seeing some potential and some promise. Those are strategies we want to sustain over time, so we don't want to just do them for a year and then drop them off the table and start something new, because it's that sustained approach that's where we're going to start to see results over time. So similar to our EL program that's been really working on over 6, 7, 8 years to build these things in place. If we keep doing these things, we think we will see those results in a similar way. At the same time, I think last time you said, well, that's good, but there probably are some things you need to be thinking about, either looking at additional promising practices or strategies we want to reconsider. So as we mentioned in earlier reports, we're looking at our preschool curriculum that aligns really tightly with our elementary schools so that we don't have all these disparate strategies or disparate pathways. The other thing that was a real gap that we noticed as we've been looking at our math program is we don't have, in our elementary school or even at our secondary schools, a tool that we can use to screen students for needs in math, and think about that for grades K through 3 in particular. We don't have SBA until 3rd grade, and so we haven't had a way to identify quickly students who need additional supports. So Tim and our assessment department this year is looking at progress monitoring tools similar to the ones we have for literacy that allow teachers to screen all of their students and then to monitor the progress of students over time. That's going to be really valuable information for us, and that will point us then to a need for very clear interventions. And so that we should have in place starting, we're actually are testing some programs right now, and we'll be starting to put those in place next year. We also, at our second special education programs, have new curriculum, Number Worlds, and Steyer Fitzgerald is functional curriculum that is helping students with numeracy. And we are really working carefully at starting to think about not having these groups of program teachers in our district that are all receiving training from different consultants, different agencies, or receiving training as departments. And so we are starting to be much more intentional about having training for all of our math teachers, whether they're a program teacher, EL, special education, or gen ed. They should all receive the same training about effective math instruction and effective intervention. And then we're looking at universal tools that all teachers have access to, because we really know that if teachers see themselves as, okay, I'm the special ed teacher and these are my kids over here, and I'm the EL teacher, these are my kids, and I'm the gen ed and those are your kids, that we don't see that really combined effort to improve performance of our students. All the teachers need to see themselves as teachers of all the kids. And then, as I mentioned, that school climate and culture is absolutely important for students to be successful, and so our school-based equity teams are a way to build that climate and culture in that supports the solid foundation. So that is going to support our culturally responsive teaching, and these are things that we say, okay, we notice that there are probably some gaps that need to be filled in, and these are practices and strategies we're looking at moving forward. So given all of that, we do believe that there's sufficient evidence that we're meeting our ends policy for the all students group, but we do know we have a need to look very specifically at student subgroups and think about what are strategies that are targeted and sufficient to make improvement gains over time. And so that will be our efforts in the coming years, and specifically, as I mentioned, within that multi-tiered system of supports framework, where we're thinking about how do we make sure kids get access to core instruction and the interventions and supports they need at the right intensity level, and we have clear ways to identify when students need those and whether or not they're making progress. And so that really is how we're bringing all of those efforts together.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will go with questions. I think Cassandra has her pencil, so we're going to have Cassandra start.
Thank you. I like having my turn. This is probably a Tim question. Is there a way to see attendance data in relation to the different demographics that we track to see if that's really part of the problem? I suspect it is, but...
Yes, we actually have that available, so we have an attendance dashboard for our you also have access to the attendance now.
Okay.
So the question is, do you have just attendance, demographic? So the question is, do we have like a dashboard that shows attendance rates for each of our demographic groups, right?
Yes, I guess it would be somewhat helpful if we could see them broken out in these categories: third grade math, SBA, fifth grade. Just trying to see if there is a noticeable difference in the kids who have absentee rates that are higher.
Right. So we do have attendance only, and then we have assessment only. But you're looking at merging the two, and that's our project this year, is to actually bring some of our discipline, attendance, and grade data together. So not currently, but it's within the next year.
Great, thanks.
I would just add to that, when we think about that multi-tiered system of supports, that would be one of the specific data markers if a student is beginning to fail or have some recurring issues that need some wraparound supports. That attendance is one of those, referrals, chronic absenteeism kinds of things would be one of the things that would be addressed along with the academic supports that would be needed. And so I think it's great to think about looking at it holistically, but I know from looking at our daily average attendance and some of those big picture data, it's pretty high. And so looking at individual students is where we're still going to make that difference, and I think it's both.
So I know obviously we abide by the Becca law, and we have people on high school campuses at least that are looking at this data and calling parents. Have we considered doing something more rigorous than just what the state law, as far as informing parents earlier?
Yeah, so as we work to that multi-tiered system of supports, the idea is that there is a team in school that's looking at holistically at student data. So achievement data, attendance data, discipline data, because really those things do relate. And you're right on target when you say attendance and achievement. There's lots of studies that show the correlation between, I mean, it just makes sense. You're not at school, you're not going to achieve. And that goes to that access to that core instruction, right? So that team would then say, okay, what would be the best intervention for a student who's absent a lot? And so, yes, you're right, it might be phone calls, it might be thinking about alternative ways to provide the curriculum, different settings, different delivery approaches. Until you start looking at that data holistically, though, you might not think about that. So you might say, oh, that kid just needs an intervention, but then they're not at school for the intervention, right? So that's our ultimate goal, is to get to a point where we're looking at social, emotional, behavioral, and academic data together and thinking about interventions then that are really customized around that whole holistic data set.
And that gets back to Mark's comment about kids who might be working. Sometimes we automatically assume it's an academic issue, and really it's an opportunity issue. And if it's a transportation thing, or if it's a time of day or whatever. So I think those are all those whys. When I look at that data, I think, what else should we be looking at alongside of those academic interventions? And I think people are doing a really good job of putting that into a system now instead of kind of assuming, and that's what we need that data for, so that we're not assuming those kinds of things. It's a good point.
Any additional questions?
So many. I just want you guys to go first.
Well, so let Eric go if he has anything.
No.
If I could just follow up quickly on this piece before you start. Is speaking to the opportunity. So when I thought of those three columns on that table, the one piece I didn't see was the enhancements or enrichments or supports. So kind of that fourth column. I was just thinking of donations. We talk about those additional enrichment opportunities, but we're not capturing that as a piece of how that's provided as well, and the value of that opportunity. And I especially think of that as low income, as our community, the affluence in our community being low income creates even other challenges in which to be able to address these issues effectively. So I guess that would just be the one piece, that opportunity I think we don't have here yet. And so I would agree strongly with the academics we cover very well, and that support system is that next piece to sort of add.
And when you're looking at the social emotional, again, I would, in addition to the outside commitments, I'd almost call them that, because that student may not be working outside of school just because he or she wants to buy this, buy that, whatever. They may actually be contributing to the household income. And if they're not even working outside the classroom, but they're watching their younger sisters and brothers, that's probably because of the different supports. So I think we need to look at all that playing into not just have the social emotional twins, if you will, but go on to the other aspects of their family life. Mm-hmm. And it's not bad; it's just a fact of their lives.
Right.
And so, Chris, I think you're next.
Well, thank you for bearing with me. And I actually really do mean there's a lot of constructive feedback on this. Again, I totally agree with you on the ELL breakout of post-ELL. That system is doing great for the children that it serves. It's getting them to speed, and so I think that's wonderful. Overall, I mean, relative performance to the rest of the state and the other districts, we're doing pretty well. But I kind of wanted to flag one of the numbers that jumped out to me. So we're starting kindergarten with 85, 86% of kids doing okay when they arrive, which is great. That's 2 in 12 or not. By the time we get to 5th grade, we're at 75%, which is 3 in 12. And it's 75% in 5th, 75% in 8th, 75% in 10th. By the time that we finish elementary school, we've lost that extra kid, and we never get him back. That's an opportunity for us. I mean, it's one thing to bring kids up who weren't at standard to begin with, but losing them off of the bandwagon is something that I wanted to acknowledge. It's not surprising. It mirrors trends across the state, but if we can actually do something about it, it's a huge opportunity. Mm-hmm. The second one, and I apologize, but I have so many questions. I mean, you've given me data,
I know,
and I want to ask all the questions about what the data. Before I try to interpret what the data means, I want to talk about what is the data. Mm-hmm. So if you could just skip back to slide 23, I'd really appreciate it. All right. So this is something where I had no idea what our categories are. Mm-hmm. And in retrospect, I'm kind of discovering whole new things about my assumptions. One of my assumptions had been once an IEP, always an IEP. But if you look at the absolute number, if we just assume that the same number of kids are in kindergarten, and it's plus or minus, but the same number of kids in kindergarten as are in 3rd, as are in 5th, as are in 8th, and as are in 10th, it's not surprising that what we see is, for example, here in autism, there are 25 kindergartners, or this is 3rd grade, sorry, 25 3rd graders in that category. There are 25, 26, and 28 kids in 5th, 8th, and 10th in that category. It's a stable number. Mm-hmm. Communication disorder, we've got 38 in 3rd grade, and by 5th grade I think we had 11, and then they don't even appear in the 8th and 10th grade. So does communication disorder mean speech disorder? Is this something where you need a speech pathologist? I just don't know.
There's a summary at the end of each of those. So that last page in that report that was sent will also give you an appendix and a glossary that will define some of that as well.
And that at that number, that could just be variation from year to year of the students who are in our district or have been identified. So again, I don't know if that's more a function of just random variation in the number of kids that are in the system.
Well, and that's where, you know, because autism diagnoses tend to be something, your child with autism is going to be a child with autism throughout the system. Mm-hmm. Mark and I have both been there. And the thing that was interesting to me is when I looked at the specific learning disabilities, you've got 94 of them in 3rd grade, 82 of them in 5th, 43 in 8th, and 41 in 10th. Where are they going is my question. Are they graduating out of having an SLD? Does an SLD mean you're not doing well in math, and therefore, of course, we only have 12% at standard? Or are these parents, have half of the parents opted out, or have half of the kids become successful and therefore no longer classified as having an SLD? I don't know, and
or have they had to leave our district because they couldn't get the services they needed.
Exactly. So that's really the.
So I don't know our specific, but I can tell you for that category in particular, students could over time get the skills that they need, so they no longer needed specially designed instruction. Mm-hmm. That may not be the case when you have a disability like autism or a health impairment, right? So, but again, that's just a large-scale statement. Yeah. It might be that for our students in districts that have really good response to intervention systems where they have really high-quality interventions over time that are sustained. You do have some students who exit need for IEP services.
Yeah, so Siri, go
if
ahead.
I'm following,
Yeah.
so your question is there a way in which you could see what happens with those specific
Right.
learning
Follow them.
disability
Post-SLD.
over time?
Yeah.
Kind of like an exit ELL
Yeah.
sort of concept.
And-
So do
Yeah.
they leave the system? So do we just lose them from the system? Do they graduate out? So what happens? I think that's
Right.
what you're trying
And
to get to.
Part of the reason that I went there is that if you just look at the percents, it looks like SLD goes from 19% success in third to 16 to 12 to 29. That, it's going down and then it pops up in 10th grade. But is this a trend that means something? Or if you just use the same baseline, that assuming there were about 90 kids, then if half of them have disappeared, and if they've been pushed into the general student population and are being counted there, we could be, by 10th grade, doing far better than the 30% on the kids who were post-SLD. Could be. I don't know how to interpret this number yet. That's all.
Yeah, I would say this is really complex
It
data
is.
to make any of those sound judgments, because you're also assuming that it's a cohort, and it may or may not be. But we could certainly do some statistical analysis of, it would actually be special services type mobility type data, and I'm sure Tim is already, he's ferociously taking notes there. I think that's worthy of looking at. I think what's difficult to determine is what's the intent at the outset? Is the intent for students to eventually not need services, or is the intent to provide stable and robust services all the way through, which is different for every student? So it's kind of even hard to make an assumption because it's so individually based IEP.
And that's why
the individual
I don't want to assume what these numbers mean.
Right.
But I know that there's really interesting things to be chased here. And I just wanted to get sort of on the table things that I see as exploratory. I mean,
and I think it's interesting to look from grade level to grade level, like you
Yeah.
pointed out. I don't know that we've done that before.
And Chris, on your point here, I want to know how much crossover there is, because yes, you've got X number of autistic students, but yet many of those students have the emotional behavioral. They have the specific learning disability, whether it's or a speech disability. So I don't know how much
are
really
multiply counted or not? I don't know.
Yeah. But you're pointing down to the multiple disabilities, but I don't think that we're. And often, to be quite frank, the students who are classified as autistic have been classified as autistic because that's the way you get services from the state. They may fall into other categories, to be quite frank, as well.
Yeah. So anyway, from my perspective, it's one of those things where when I look at these data, the first thing I'm asking is, which categories can I lump so that we can look at them together? And that, I suspect that, yes, autism, but even within autism, you've got a spectrum, truly. And so, but the fact that we're at about 50% of our children with autism are at standard on math throughout their careers, either that's the spectrum we've been dealt, or when they arrive, they're already getting special testing. For a nonverbal student, they don't take the standard SBA, but I think they're still in our numbers.
Yeah, these are the students who have taken SBA.
This is just SBA?
Yeah,
okay.
So this doesn't include students who have taken an alternative
Okay, actually that helps
assessment.
me. So, Right.
Yeah.
But a number of them that cannot, are very low verbal or nonverbal, none of the tests do the trick.
And I think that really hits the point, is that every single one of those students has an individual education program. And so the needs, even though it's a category that has similarities, there's wide variation within each of those. And as Mark was pointing out, in some cases, students fall in multiple categories.
Yep. So anyway, my intent has always been to try and isolate children who are in the SLD category from the other categories. I didn't realize how much heterogeneity there was here, because I don't think hearing impairment is in the same category. It's not a cognitive, it's a particular intervention is required to allow them to participate. But this is a huge step forward. I'm very pleased to see it. I have no idea what it means yet. I'm not going to try and force an interpretation on it, because there are so many assumptions that I need to be educated on. But that said, this is a great step. So thank you.
And I will say one thing we are looking very closely at is that SLD category and how do students qualify for that and what's been in place to prepare students to get the services they need or the supports they need. And ultimately, we'd like to get to a point where we're using a response to intervention model for thinking about how do students get into that category. So that's part of part of that larger multi-tiered system of support work that we're doing. And a lot of really good things need to be in place before you can do that.
Where does ADHD come in on which category?
Health impairment.
Okay. Health impairment.
Health impairment?
Yeah. That's exactly. I mean, that's what the state. But exactly. I mean, it's the assumptions piece.
To just follow up on the specific learning disability, knowing that dyslexia goes in there, knowing the work with dyslexia that has currently been implemented this year, and some of that, it'll be interesting to see. Well, the challenge will be they might not ever qualify for an IEP if you catch it early enough, and therefore you can, if we do it correctly, then they won't ever show up here. But ideally, if that can get built in, you could see that possibly making a shift over time.
Yep. So those were my major questions. I do have a couple modest ones. So on slide 8, the math pathways, I'm always a supporter thereof. I would love to know what the numbers are. What fraction of our graduating seniors have gone through each pathway? And how much does that vary by school? And the last sort of data that I do yearn for, this is something I don't think I have asked for clearly in the past, but what we saw tonight in the report is the floor. And when you're reporting out on ER2 for math, to me, it's also how much challenge are we getting the kids who are high flyers? I really do think that the AP tests belong in this report. And I'm not saying that I've asked for it before and therefore I'm upset that they're not here. It's just a realization that this is something, it's all part of the same piece. It's one thing we've got to, I mean, our math in high school is ending at the 10th grade SBA, which is Algebra 2. Algebra 2 is nice, but Algebra 2 is not enough for many of the schools that our kids are trying to apply to.
So if you're looking
Algebra 1 was enough for me. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
So if you're looking for those further
but
math
I'm interested
things,
in, yeah, exactly.
So not just AP, there'd be IB incorporated with that. College and high school would be incorporated with that, possibly statistic. I mean, there's different ones. So I guess you'd be looking at any of those more
but adding a
options
piece in
beyond there.
And the last one is actually not a data question. It's actually something where my colleague noted it, and I actually was just starting to wonder, but he was faster to the draw. I love the fact that we didn't spend a slide discussing the differences between male and female because those differences are not interesting in our data. It's in the written report. It's not in the slide deck. It's worth having it at the very end as if someone has downloaded the slide deck to just add a slide that says other categories that were considered but weren't part of the presentation because we didn't judge them interesting. See the written report for those. So.
Kind of it, right?
Well,
just to be clear, it is interesting.
It's interesting, but it doesn't cause me much. It causes no concern to me.
That's
I'm happy
right,
with
but
it. So,
it's worth highlighting.
Yeah.
There is no.
Well, I just don't want to spend 5 minutes discussing
it between
it.
male and female students, which is not the case for
some other subjects.
And for many other similarly situated districts.
So,
Mark.
One of the concerns I've started having over the last few years as I watched on the ground level inside the schools are what I've referred to as the invisible core, the B students, the C students, even the low A students in this school district that kind of float through as long as they don't have a major dip in their performance, they don't become a behavioral problem, they're invisible. But yet, many of them, especially the B and C students, or especially the C students and below even, some of these do we have a pathway of mathematics classes for design for those students, if you will, that are not your high flyers in math, but yet they're high flyers in whatever? I mean,
yeah, I think that,
basically
I think it's the question of what it would be the options. Let's say I finish algebra or I finish geometry. I have a college and career pathway. There's some courses I want to take. I think there's some potential in that with our new 7-period day for schools to start looking at additional math courses that might be of high interest to students that would align with pathways. So, for example, a student that wants to enter psychology is going to need some level of statistics, right? And so are there courses and options for them in those areas?
I'm thinking of the journalism students, the business, well, maybe the business students will need to have the statistical, but I'm thinking about the ones that are going to be doing whether they're English majors, they're journalism majors, so forth, that this really isn't going to have a lot of significance for them, to be quite frank.
There are some courses that have math content, so like you're talking about business and finance. I think we'll start seeing more of those now that schools have opportunities to add them in, because as you know, in the past, our student schedules have been pretty packed with required courses.
And that's something you've got a very interesting question. I know that the state board had given us had given students a loophole that if they could design something that was Algebra 2 equivalent but was relevant to where they were trying to go, that they could substitute in. I would, without getting into the details, I would simply love to know how many of our students are able to take advantage of that. It's something that I know that they made a loophole, but it would have been a whole lot easier if they said, and here are some courses that you could offer that would, rather than having every kid have to redesign the wheel. It's something that, I mean, I am with you, not necessarily for the psych student. I'm with stats, if I had my choice, would be the final math course for every student who's not going to be in STEM.
So
ability in stats.
What you're referring to, Chris, is that Algebra 3 requirement.
The Algebra 2 equivalency.
You can take an alternative course. So that's something, again, that used to be a course that we made sure kids were taking, and now there's some more flexibility and options for kids.
Because I could see this having an impact on their overall GPA and their abilities to get in a good school when math is not going to be their end-all and be-all. And, do you have a way of taking a parallel track, if you will, as opposed to an avoidance track like I took?
There is also, and I don't know what exploration we've done, of looking at how CTE courses can be dual credited and cross credited to be able to do those specific sorts of things. So can you address that in a hands-on and make sure that those standards are met? I don't know if we're pursuing that route. And if so, that'd be an excellent thing to be able to at least have an idea of that alternative option from a different way. I mean, I was thinking of high school tech in the theater is a lot where you're doing a lot of different things, so that would be one of the components.
I know we're continuing to access that opportunity as much as possible, and there are some that have been done, and I know Matt could probably speak to that, or Mike too, but we could certainly do a board brief on that, because I know that's been a priority.
That'd be great.
So the one thing I did take the opportunity to do is I looked at the assertion of progress that we wrote last year and sort of what the focus and priority areas were and compared to sort of this report this year and where it was coming from. And it was interesting because one of the things we had requested was improvement in fifth grade SBA performance, which is getting at that, how do you make sure they don't fall off the bus? So I think that seems to be a holding point of what we're looking at in some of this. That gap for low-income students was there as well. It actually, when I looked at the rankings, we actually were lower. So I appreciate you're bringing that all forward and being very, this is what's going on and we need to do things. And it does beg to that bigger picture of opportunity. And as I was listening to the discussion, the one thing that came to mind was we should go talk to the students and ask them, what is it that we can do? What is the support that we can provide? What pieces, what are we missing in this? I think they might be able to provide us some of that best insight. That could be something the board takes on as a linkage concept as well, to be able to get that from regards to a policy side. So I guess that was another piece. Those gaps with Hispanic and African American, they've been holding. Addressing the special education piece and really trying to see what that was. That was a piece we had asked for, so it's starting to get there, so that's really appreciated with all that work that's going forward. And the equity work, which hasn't been highlighted yet, that's really that school climate and trying to address those other bigger issues that aren't going to come through in a test. I think the trauma-informed approach pieces that you're also looking at and working with, we haven't done a lot of talking around that, I think is important. So it was great to see those pieces, and so that will help to feed in. So appreciate that work that has come through. Early learning still is that piece. It'd be nice to see the breakout of how do our programs do specifically, because right now it incorporates everybody's, which I also think we play a role there. Some of the pieces we're speaking to here are really collective impact pieces. So you look at the math, we speak of the supports, that's really how do we bring everybody to the table. And so Eastside Pathways, I know there actually has been a lot of work on chronic absenteeism with the Eastside Pathways collective impact model and the collaborative that's working on that, and Tim has been actively involved with that. So I guess those are the really good things. So I see a lot of really good progress. I appreciate the work with the data. I was thinking of your 80-85% was when we know core curriculum was there. In using that, I went and looked and I said, middle school would be my concern because we're not getting there even from a core curriculum standpoint. So that was the piece that sort of jumped at me based on one of those pieces that you had said.
And just as a thinking about that is, recently adopted middle school curriculum and making sure it's aligned with standards. And then also I really do want to highlight, I know this may sound like it's not a big deal, but that progress monitoring tool that we can put into elementary so we can start identifying kids in those 3rd, 4th, 5th grade bands and start putting interventions in place, because right now that doesn't exist. And so I think that's a big hole that we've found in our system.
And the other piece with math, and this is, is really thinking through the enhancement component, games, chess, logic, the exposure to those pieces. I think of our math clubs and different things, but often that's not a widely disparate group who's accessing those. Those are often our high achievers are going. And that's actually the opportunity to have fun with those things. I know we do a lot of math nights, and that's where we have a lot of support. So how do we build those even stronger into this, I guess, is the other piece. The book, The Opportunity, I don't remember the name of it, actually speaks to a lot of these sorts of things well. So to think about from a policy side, that'll be a value for us to really look at as to how we do things around that side. So thank you. I want to say I appreciate the work. There are a lot of similarities between the ELA and now between math, and I'm assuming we'll see many similarities in science is what my guess is going to be. So that's something for us to think about, of maybe if we structure things differently going forward as well as we look at that. Anything else?
Sorry, real quick question. One of our strategies, so this is slide 56, expand training for teachers and PSYOP. Could you?
Yeah, why would we think a language strategy would help with math? Is that the
yes?
That kind of
could
the
you
gist of the
talk
question?
about that a little more?
Yeah, so think about how think about the types of assessments students have for math. They typically have some kind of language component to it. So it's there's a question or a prompt. There's vocabulary built into that, and so there's just that level of just the basic vocabulary, but there's also academic vocabulary and how to make sense of words and phrases and connect. And so it's thinking about accessing math through language that is something that we have to consider when we're working on math. Now, if math problems were simply numeric, then we might not think about PSYOP, but there's just so much to unpack with math as we assess it. And that's not a bad thing because math is a language and it's embedded in language. And so if you're going to use it well, you have to have a good grasp of language.
Thank you.
Playing off of Eric's question, and maybe even going back to that B and C student, or for that matter, the student that is not going to go into engineering, but may have a business track already in mind, whether it's marketing or management, whatever. If we could combine that somehow with a CTE focus, almost a CTE track, if you will, for mathematics, I could see that being more compelling and, to be quite frank, more useful to that student than AP calculus. Because, to be quite frank, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, "Are you kidding me?" I know I would have. There's if you can find a way to focus math into the various needs in society as opposed to the high engineering degrees, the STEM degrees, I think I like the idea that Chris had with statistics, because I can think of virtually no area that I could think of that doesn't have some aspect of stat in it, and you work with. And I know that God knows reporters that I've worked with, their eyes glaze over when it comes to statistics.
Did you read the front page of USA Today? Always.
Oh, there's always pie chart, but there's one reporter doing that pie chart. In fact, there's only one person at Time Magazine that does nothing but statistical stories, and his stories are that small.
Yeah. Okay. So, any other questions? Okay, so the with the ends results in the monitoring report, actually, Chris is going to write the assertion of progress based on the conversation here of sort of where those things off. If he has a moment, I don't know if he's ready to give a quick summary of what he took from this.
Actually, yeah, so there's pieces, big picture. The big picture remains that we're doing well. We are a strong district. We're proud of that. And yet we're sure we can do better. And so in that framework, the chronic challenges, the chronic important ones that we flagged last year are still with us, and I don't think anybody is surprised by that. The plateau in 5th grade and beyond, by that point you've lost 1 in 4 kids, and those kids never get back on the bandwagon. So keeping kids on the bandwagon, if we could just start at 85% and stay at 85%, that would be huge, instead of having that loss between kindergarten and 5th. The opportunity gaps do still persist in low income, Hispanic, Latino, and African American, and SPED. We're proud of the non-opportunity gap for post-ELL. The early learning issue is still something that we believe is worth investment in. This is something where when we look at the numbers, that 85%, that means that, 1 in 8 of our kindergartners, if we can get to them earlier, we might be able to help everyone accelerate. So boosting that starting point. The other issues that were brought up are in some ways, they're mostly not necessarily data interpretation. There's new data. We had asked for the special ed breakout. That has clearly begun, and it is clearly, having known it would be complicated, it's even more complicated than I ever appreciated, and it's going to be very interesting to see where we get to. I, speaking for myself, am not ready to make any assertions of what you need to do with that, but I'm glad to see progress being made. Let's figure out where our assumptions are. How are the SLD kids doing? Is there a post-SLD category, et cetera? But that was very satisfying to see that. It's the first time I've seen that breakout, and it was fascinating because I could not have predicted where those numbers would be. I really could not have. The other sort of category is missing data, and the BC student, the invisible middle, one piece of missing data that we're looking for is outside of the standard pathway of thou shalt do Algebra 1, thou shalt go to geometry, thou shalt pass, thou shalt go to Algebra 2, and thou shalt proceed through trigonometry into whatever they're calling math analysis these days, and thou shalt do some calculus. Despite the fact that I have suffered through that particular system myself, there is a good argument to be made that if a student is not proceeding into a STEM career, and there still are such careers out there, that their terminal course should be relevant to their career rather than assuming that they're another STEM student. And we really haven't pushed the issue of getting that report out of the aptitude and the Algebra 2 equivalency, providing that track for students rather than requiring them to find their own way through it. Another piece of missing data is pathway utilization from slide 8, and then the high flyers. Part of ER2 is not just where are we doing in terms of meeting standard, but how far are the kids who are flying going to go. And I think, let's see, and finally, among the approaches, that is, what are we going to do about it? The enhancement and enrichment as dimension of opportunity is an important thing. We are supportive of the interventions that we're looking at. I'm glad to see that what we're talking about in the 2 slides is the first slide at the tail end is things that we're going to keep doing because we think they work. And because we think they work is a very important thing, because if you don't see that it's yielding value, then let's invest it somewhere else. Time is money. And the other side of that is the what we're going to do that's new, that we're hoping will actually move the needle. And the only thing I personally might have been looking for there was, if we're going to try and move the needle, if you're going to have those 3 columns, tie them to which needle we're trying to move. And I think that's what I've got. Did I?
So here's what I'm going to recommend. If you thought there might be something missing,
Yeah.
I can email it to you, and we can refer it. It looks like you have a question you want to follow up with, Mark.
Well, no, only that as we're looking at how to improve the various segments, I would be interested to see the beacons on the hill. If there's a program here, there's a program there, whether it's in Bumblestick, Iowa, or New York City, or wherever, that we highlight what they're doing, why they're doing it, and are they getting the results they intended to get? Because there's no sense in my mind to reinvent a wheel when you can steal something from somebody else that's so damn successful. I mean, that's just leaps us forward, to be quite frank.
I totally agree with you, but that's part of a study session. That's not part of the ER. So.
Absolutely, and I think that'll be a lot of discussions that come through a variety of different things. I think you'll see those pieces come through. All right, well, thank you. So Chris will be putting that together. That will ideally come back at the December meeting so that he has a little more time in which to draft that. But you should be getting that by the middle of November and then be able to do so after November 15th before the December meeting. And then we can have any further discussion at that time if needed. But thank you very much, staff, for all the hard work. That was fabulous. Appreciate it. And I think with that, we can wrap this one up. Oh, I know. We have more we have to do. No, I can't. I need to find my thing. So at this point, actually, we are going to have a program report. And Dr. Stavum, you are on tonight.
Barbara Posthumus is going to give us a brief enrollment and capacity report.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to give our 2016 bond project update and capacity. So our last report on our Building on Success projects was in September, and I just knocked the microphone. I don't know, it's somewhere on the floor, but the microphone will still work, so I think it's down there. We'll get it afterwards. So we have, this is just an update on our 8 projects funded by our 2016 bond that was passed by voters in February of 2016. First, I'll go over the projects. We have 8 projects going on. We'll go over the ones that are in progress. So our Juanita High School Rebuild and Enlarge project that is opening fall of 2020. It's a phase project. So we have, right now, we are working on the first floor drywall installation that started in September. The theater masonry is complete. The steel structure is complete, and the first floor concrete is complete. And then they will complete the exterior building envelope in January 2019. So these are just some pictures of the project in progress, and the top picture is the aerial view of the site, the top left, and the right photo shows the completed brick installation on the southwest face of the building. The lower middle picture is the one of the exterior walls on the theater, and the lower left is glass installation on the courtyard side of the building. So this picture shows the yellow is the construction zone. So that is where the construction is going on right now on the site plan. And in between, you can see to the left in the light letters is the field house and the pool. And then in the U of the construction zone is the classrooms. And then to the on the very left is the portables that were put in place for temporary housing during construction. So this slide, the blue area on this slide, shows the portion of the campus that will open in fall of 2019. And then the gray area is what will open in fall of 2020. So you can see how the phasing is occurring during the project. So moving on to our new middle school. And our new middle school in Redmond Ridge, which will be opening in fall of September of 2019. So what has happened the last 2 months is the sports field, natural turf was installed, electrical and mechanical is being completed, and paving and sidewalk installation has begun. And then they're placing the surface for the track, and starting the floor finishes and wall finishes and fixtures and drywall installation. So these are just some aerial photos, and the top left is the school. Top aerial photo, the top right is a view of the track field showing the natural turf, and the bottom left is the enclosure near the library area, and the bottom right is just showing the parking lot, which the contractors are using right now. School is not in session, but the contractors are using it. Yeah. So... And then these are just some interior shots of the classroom that are being constructed. And the top right is a science classroom with partition walls and that opens to the shared learning spaces. And then the bottom right is interior stairs. And the bottom left is the east wall of the gymnasium. So moving on to Peter Kirk Elementary School. This will be opened in fall of 2019. And we have completed the geothermal wells and the first floor concrete installation and the structural steel installation. And then they are coming and they are I think having their what they call their topping out ceremony, where they install the last steel beam, will come up in November, and the building enclosure work will begin. Here's just a picture of Kirk. And then Meade, which also will open in fall of 2019. So they also, similar timeline, their geothermal wells were started, first floor concrete was completed, and structural steel installation began and should be completed in November, and to begin on the building enclosure work. Old Redmond Schoolhouse, which will house our preschool classrooms, and that will also open in 2019. They are remodeling the interiors. We have received the bids and awarded the final bid for that, and the building permit was issued, and construction will begin in November. And a lot of what will begin is removal of the old materials, and then they'll start doing the rest of the construction in the next few months. But we anticipate that being completed so furniture can move in and things like that in May, and it will open in the fall.
All right, thank you. I think we had a question.
I'm sorry, okay.
It was actually on Juanita, I believe. So have you gone through all the projects? I thought that was our last one.
Yeah, this is,
okay. No need to go back. It wasn't really a question. It was more of I want to appreciation for the staff and the students at the school. It's very challenging when you're under construction and on site, and half of you are in portables. And I just want to acknowledge that we understand it's not the easiest of situations, especially when it's pouring down rain and you don't have any covering over your head if you haven't brought an umbrella, and you're going back and forth between East and West Campus. But eventually, this too shall pass.
Yes. Yes, we also appreciate the hard work, all of our staff and teachers and students. It is challenging to have construction right on site, but they, I know, are looking forward to anticipating this beautiful new building that will open in fall of 20. So, thank you. So the next slide.
I think we have one more question.
One last.
You can hold for a second.
With Dr. Saban's desire to have more interest in internships and so forth, granted, we don't have the entire construction period left, but during the time we have a construction period, I think it would be really great if we could, even if it was only one semester, look into some kind of a program for CTE kids to have construction management exposure while they've got it on site as a lab right across the field from them. If we could somehow fashion something just as maybe a pilot project, to be quite frank.
I don't know what exists already, so we can pass that on to Matt and Tracy for CTE options. I don't know if they've already used that or if there's anything, but we'll look at that.
Yeah.
And I do know the contractors at all of our projects are willing to come in and talk to the classes and just give tours and information. I know they've spoken at some assemblies at our elementaries or some individual classes, and I know they've done the same at the high school. So anytime someone wants them to come into their class, they will do that. So, all right. So just these are our completed projects. So Clara Barton opened this fall, and we had our first day of school in September, grand opening ceremony in October, and we will get our final certificate of occupancy this month. And these are just the picture of the main front entrance and then our ribbon cutting ceremony. And Ella Baker also opened this fall. And we also had our grand opening ceremony in October, and they will get their final certificate of occupancy in November. And front entrance of the building, and we had a little bit of a rainy day that day, and our ribbon cutting ceremony. And Explorer, which opened last fall, and we are closing out that project now that all the warranty work is done. And I don't have any pictures. And then just our regular program update. We are monitoring our estimates versus our costs on a regular basis. We have been working in a very expensive marketplace, but our partners have actively valued our projects, working with our design advisory committee to mitigate some of this escalation. And the good news is right now our projects are 100% bid out, so all our projects have been bid. So risk from market changes is really low right now. So we do, our program did have contingency in it, which are being used right now to offset those market conditions and jurisdictional requirements. And we have, the good news is we've also earned more in interest earnings than planned, and more in impact fees than planned, $7 million more in impact fees than originally estimated. So those will, again, help offset some of those market conditions. As we've discussed before, we have confirmed approval of state funding from OSPI, but we still have to claim those funds, and we'll get them at the end of the project. So just continuing to keep an eye on cash flow related to that. And then while we are 100% bid out on the projects, if there are any unforeseen events, those could have an impact on the use of those funds. So, okay, so communication, we are continuing to do a regular monthly Bond e-News update, continued posting videos and pictures, and Facebook Live broadcasts. We'll probably do that with the topping out ceremonies. We had our grand opening at Clara Barton and Ella Baker, and then we do an annual Bond progress mailer to all communities, all households in the district, and that will be mailed this month. So on our website is more information. So next I'm going to provide a capacity update. Just a reminder, our October enrollment came in at 29,987 students. We tried to find those 13. We may get them this month. We're not sure yet. But October, that is our official count. We're still third highest in district, so third largest district, I should say, in the state. So. Our enrollment, this is the chart that many of you have seen many times. This shows our enrollment history for the last 20 years. And in the first 10 years of that, we remained relatively flat, even declined slightly. But starting in 2008, we started our significant increase, 26% increase since that time. And this really unprecedented increase. So It's not normal. So we have had 11 straight years of enrollment increases. We've grown by about 620 students per year, which is the size of a large elementary school. So this chart shows, I apologize, I see the numbers were cut off at the side by the border. The blue, this shows our capacity, our permanent capacity, aligned with our enrollment projections. So the blue part of the bar shows the capacity, the permanent capacity that we have. And the green part of the bar shows our the capacity that's being added by our bond projects. So the 8 projects that we talked about, and I see that number is cut off slightly. That should say 3,300 students. And as you can, and then the green line represents our projected enrollment. And as you can see, the permanent capacity is well below our projected enrollment. And but we do use portables to make up some of that difference. And so we've grown 6,200 students since 2008. The 2016 bond was the first phase of the long-term task force recommendations to address our growth in aging facilities. And our portables can help solve our capacity problems, but are not a long-term solution. So we've added 42 portables since 2015 to deal with short-term capacity needs. And we have right now a total of 181 portables district-wide, which is the equivalent of 6 elementary schools. So this chart represents our total capacity K-12, and the enrollment projections are our total enrollment projections K-12, but we still have, even with portables, there are still capacity shortfalls at individual levels and areas. So I want to just go over our capacity shortfalls in each level and in area. So the next 3 slides, I'm going to show our capacity needs based on our preliminary enrollment projections through 2021-22. And again, I say preliminary because we've updated with fall enrollment, but we still work on updating information with future developments. And so our final enrollment projections will be, we usually typically get those done at the end of January. So we work with all of our cities to update information on their comprehensive plans and meet with our jurisdictions to make sure we have the latest information on future development. So this chart shows our capacity need at the elementary level, and it's broken down by learning community. So with the opening of the 2 new schools, the Redmond Learning, there are no critical capacity needs in the Redmond Learning Community. The blue part of the bar shows permanent capacity. The lighter red part of the bar or pink shows the capacity need including portables, and then the red part of the bar shows the capacity need based on the enrollment projections. So we don't have permanent capacity or portable capacity in those areas. So no critical capacity need in the Redmond Learning Community. There's a small red line at the top of the Eastlake Learning Community, so they are starting to have a critical capacity need in that area. And then, of course, there's a larger need in our Juanita and Lake Washington Learning Communities. At the middle school level, we have, again, with the opening of Redmond Ridge Middle School, we have a very small use of portables in that learning community, and in the Eastlake Learning Community, there isn't a critical capacity need right now. And with the opening of Redmond Ridge Middle School in the fall of 19, we will reduce the reliance of portables at Evergreen, but for the longer term past this outlook, there potentially will, those portables may need to be used again. So, but in the, and in the Juanita Learning Community at the middle school level, they are using portables right now to solve their capacity, but in the Lake Washington Learning Community, there is a critical capacity need at Rose Hill Middle and Kirkland Middle. And then the next slide is the high school slide. So both Juanita High School and Eastlake High School have capacity right now to house, permanent capacity to house the projected student enrollment through the year 2021. Redmond Learning Community has a small capacity need, but it's under, I think it's about 50 students, so it's compared to their size, that's manageable. But Lake Washington High School, they right now have 250 students housed in portables, plus they need additional, the red bar, they need additional capacity, so they have a critical capacity need in that learning community. So based on those capacity needs, we've been working on capital levy, looking at capital levy proposal and funding, which will provide funding for these capital critical needs through 21-22. And then we will continue to do our long-term planning, continue to engage the community for our long-term planning and development of our future projects. So that completes my presentation. Any questions?
Any questions from anybody? It looks like no. It sounds like it was clear enough. And
okay.
Thanks, and appreciate all the work going forward with all the facilities. And there's been a lot happening. So I just had the chance to be at Juanita High School.
These are exciting times with all these projects. So we're very pleased that we have these projects available. So thank you.
So thank you. That was fun. Let's get the update of where everything was at.
All right. Thank you.
All right. And next we have Stephen is your superintendent report this evening.
Yep. This will be relatively quick. First of all, I just want to point out that tomorrow is Election Day, and we hope that everybody will exercise their right to vote. And I want you to know that as a new resident of the Washington state, I am a registered voter. And so I will have my virtual sticker. I see that I can get a virtual sticker tomorrow, so we need to get those stickers on. Also coming up is Veterans Day on the 11th, and we will be observing that as a school district on the 12th. We have a lot of different programs, so if you're interested in attending any of those school-level programs, you can certainly find some of those on our website, but we'd also be happy to steer you to some of those. We'll be attending a number of those. I attended the YES, Youth Eastside Services, reception last week, where we were given a certificate of appreciation as a partner and the commitment to our Eastside students and families. It was a nice event. I got to meet a few more people, and so I wanted to share this with you because this is a district note of appreciation. And finally, I had met last week on one of my school tours at Bell, and I wanted to just share with you a couple of the interview questions that I received. It was basically another superintendent interview, and had they been the ones to ask the questions, I'm not quite sure if you would have chosen me or not. I would like to think so, but they were just as intense or more intense than some of the questions that I came across in that process. One of the questions is, what values are part of your moral compass, and how do those values contribute to a thriving school district? No small answer there. There are 32 spoken languages at Bell. We believe the most important languages we speak here are empathy and persistence. How does your vision for our school district support all our languages, both ethnic and social emotional? Again, not a small answer. What motivated you to lead Lake Washington School District as opposed to other districts, and what are unique qualities you notice about us that you feel sets us apart from other districts? So those are just a few samples of the very well thought out, intelligent questions that our students asked, and it was a lovely discussion. And I think we can be very, very optimistic about the future when we think about the state of our nation and our voting season and all of that. I have all the confidence in the world in our students.
So it would be great if we could have answers to some of those at some point in time. Maybe through the board brief, you could put one each time. And
hired me. I'm already on board.
You are on board, but you know, it'd be good.
Go ahead and answer them now if you'd like. I mean,
very interesting questions.
Not the first day of hearing.
Thank you very much. Those are fabulous questions. It's quite impressive. So next we have a legislative piece. We've been working on our legislative platform and priorities, and so Director LaLiberty will go ahead and pass that out, and then it says here you will provide comments. Is that true?
All right, well, I'll do my part. All right, so I am passing out, and I didn't keep them for myself, a draft set of priorities that staff put together following our last study session. So I should say these are our board legislative priorities, and staff has graciously prepared the draft based on our conversation. It reflects our board goals as well as our priorities. And I'd like it for everyone to have a chance to review it now. This was also provided in the board briefs, but if you need a few minutes to just briefly review it again, I think we need to tonight vote to adopt as long as there is agreement on our priorities for the upcoming year. And then Dr. Stavum, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just say, as somebody who's new to the district and hearing the ongoing conversations that we have in a variety of places, I think these reflect what's important to our district and what's important for students. And so I think this is accurate and helps us in terms of what we want to advocate for and what we want to be watching as the legislative season is underway. It also aligns well with priorities of the other organizations that we're part of. And so I think these are a good reflection of that work.
Great. So does anyone have any questions or comments on the platform for this year?
So I actually am I'm very pleased with the overall platform, but I'm actually particularly pleased with the format. The lumping under umbrellas of academic success, flexibility, innovative learning environments, and recruiting, hiring, and retaining, these are the big picture that matters to us, and these are the specific items underneath it. I actually really like this format, and I think it's better than the previous time we did this.
Your categories are somewhat similar, but we just revised the format a bit for
and I like it.
Readability. I'm glad. Then mission accomplished, although someone else might have requested columns.
And I guess I should have led this discussion with what is the purpose of what we are.
That would be great.
Yes, thank you. So this is the board's, what everyone has in front of them tonight, and which will be available on our website for the public to view, is the board's 2019 legislative platform and our priorities. This platform is something the board will adopt and will be the framework for us to advocate to our elected representatives for what it is we would like to see occur in Olympia in this upcoming legislative session. In the coming months, the board will be meeting with the different, how many how many districts do we have? So 9 legislative representatives that represent the Lake Washington School District, or represent areas that the Lake Washington School District is in. And we will be using this to inform our legislators and advocate for positions that are important for our students.
Any further discussion? If not, I can entertain a motion for approval, because I did not hear of any changes.
None to suggest, so I'll move that we approve this as presented. As far as the written version of the elevator pitch, this is great.
Thank you, staff.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Carlson and seconded by Director Sage to approve the legislative platform put forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, with that, we now have a platform to go forward and do that. And I would like to highlight that it does have the tagline of the 4 learning communities, 1 district for all kids. 414, the number of the Lake Washington School District. So we are working at getting that concept out there. So that's great. So thank you very much for the work by staff and by board members in getting this done. And now it'll be great to be able to speak around those priorities. Is there any other update, Eric, that you'd like to give?
No, not this time.
Do you want to give an analysis of your prediction for the legislative elections?
We're going to skip the analysis and we're going to move on. So our next step is there any board follow-up?
I'm not sure if this is follow-up, more of a report out. It'll be brief, I promise. Mark and I had the opportunity on Friday to tour the Northwest Center's preschool program in their downtown Seattle location. And we also went to their Kent facility, it's actually the commercial laundry. They have a 60% inclusion rate at their laundry facility, and we got to see several employees and learn how the whole process works. And we got to see their mock-up, which is staged down there, of the Amazon mail room, complete with conveyor belt and different size of packages and barcodes and zip codes and how they would sort things, and the actual Amazon trays they would have to pull things off shelves and package with. So it's pretty detailed and pretty impressive. And speaking as a parent of a student who is in a transition program, I think the sooner we can get kids to figure out what it is that they like to do to try and help them find a career path, the better.
Thank you. Any other follow-up?
Yeah, I echo the fact that I'm so glad that we've got some really great partners out there, and I've been very impressed, especially with the folks at Northwest Center. I'm not saying anything about the rest of our partners, because they've been very good too, but these folks, especially the two leaders that were with us the other day, Gene and Bill, they just have an enthusiasm, and they also have a commitment because they have family members that would benefit from this also. And so their commitment isn't just a paycheck, it's in the heart.
Any future agenda items? You have one. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I'm not sure if it's an agenda item or a follow-up, but
toss it out.
Yeah, no, all of us, I think it was yesterday evening, received a note from a high school student in our district who was enthusiastically advocating that perhaps we could give our sports team players credit for PE. And I've always been sympathetic to this position, but the student brought one piece of information to my attention that I need to have checked out. If our neighboring districts are giving their teams PE credit, then we need to get on the bandwagon.
If I could, and then I will let you speak. Yes. So Dr. Stephen I forwarded that on to make sure that she was aware in order to be able to do exactly that work that you're speaking to determine that piece. So I'm going to go ahead and let you go from there.
Yep, Mr. Montebianco and I have been having that conversation, and we're actually doing a comparative. Interestingly enough, we believe that we may be less rigorous in that requirement than our neighboring districts, so we're doing a little fact-finding. There are some interesting nuances in what the law says about how those kinds of things can be done, and so we are trying to interpret the law correctly as well as allowing for that in the right ways that maintain some rigor, but we are doing a specific comparison.
If I may ask one other favor, Issaquah, my understanding, might also provide credit for
we
like
can
a half
certainly
credit
add that
or
to
one.
the chart.
If you could add that. Thank you. Oh, and North Shore, they just threw out real quickly at the end there.
We'll put that in a board brief for you.
Perfect, thanks. That's it? Okay, so then I just have two. One is to toss out and ask the question. The other is board policies. Cassandra and I have been going through the governance process and the board and CEO relations. And the idea is to have those reviewed and be able to come back in December based on that conversation we had in August, so that those can all be reviewed and finished, and then we'll start through the executive limitations. It's been a learning experience. It is. And then we'll continue that conversation as we go through in which to do the rest of those. The other question for a future agenda item is just a document management system. As Cassandra and I are doing these governance policies, what we're beginning to recognize is the challenge of looking at historical data for transparency purposes, that searching is very difficult to be able to find things. You have to know when a board meeting happens. You have to, and it might be that we just need to learn better on SharePoint and how that works, or there are different systems. And Dr. Staven mentioned in Nebraska, they use Spark Data is their board docs. We have a board docs that's supported by WASDA, and it's a nationwide program. I've spoken with them several times at NSBA. Is that something you would be interested? My question is this: is it something you'd be interested in our pursuing to look at as an option to be able to move to be able to manage our documents and create better transparency, hopefully?
Anything that makes it easier to understand and find things on our website, I'm all in favor of. If the board docs people can do it, and because I've tried to search for things that were historic, and it was like Indiana Jones.
So with that, then, we'll look at setting up something to be able to have a presentation on it so we can get an idea as to what it means and looking forward to what that would mean, and we can make that decision one way or the other on it. That work? Yep. Okay. So those were my two. Any debrief? Okay. And then last, any other comments? Now I got two to highlight for you. WASDA regional meeting was on Saturday. We had an opportunity to legislative as well as speaking about bargaining and negotiations around King County. So that was a very enlightening thing and very different experiences across the board of what has occurred. That's where the enrollments and pieces of changing different enrollment challenges in different districts of what is happening. So that's just something to be aware of the WASDA. And then we have the WASDA annual conference coming up in November as well.
Not just November, but in what, 2? It's before our next meeting. So I guess, can I throw something out here?
Throw.
Okay. I'm attending. I think a lot of us are attending. It's a very great opportunity to learn things. I think that I would invite the board at our next meeting to maybe come prepared to share something we learned from the conference.
That will be a future agenda item. We will just add that, and we can bring that back. That's a great idea.
Given the events of the last week or so in Pittsburgh, in Sammamish yesterday, they held a Platopians for Peace gathering. Virtually every denomination that I could think of was there. It was moving. It was well attended, despite the fact that I was at one point looking around for an old man with a beard that was going to be loading animals 2 by 2 because I thought we were going to have another flood. But it was extremely moving, and I think one of the things that struck home, in fact, there's a piece in Ed Week about the fact that some states require education about the Holocaust, and I think that as we look at our inclusion issues, and as we look at our growing population of various religions and cultures, I really think that we need to start looking at our relationships with these local leaders from the various cultures and religions, and I think that all of our students will benefit from it, and perhaps we'll have a little bit less trouble with issues that have faced other districts and have faced us.
Thank you. One other piece, there's an Eastside Pathways All Partners meeting. So Eastside Pathways is the collective impact organization that we're involved with, Bellevue School District, Lake Washington School District, as well as our jurisdictions, nonprofits. So that is an opportunity. It's Thursday from 11:30 to 1. You can register online. I can send you information if you're interested. I'll be attending. They're do early learning as one collaborative, as well as chronic absenteeism and college and career pathways, which are sort of 3 big areas that we've spoken to. And last, just FYI, there are some great plays going on at many of our high schools this weekend and next weekend. So if you get the opportunity, get the chance to go out, it can be a lot of fun. We got the chance to see the Karamazov brothers up playing with our orchestra up at Redmond High School, which is a fabulous experience. And they're doing Joseph and Technicolor Dreamcoat. I think Juanita's doing Aladdin. I'm not sure. Arabian Nights. There we go. So there's lots of opportunities within our community between the music, the plays, to be able to just see what our students are doing across the board. All right. Anything else? All right. So thank you very much for indulging a longer meeting. Appreciate the conversation and everything that went forward with it. Look forward to seeing your summary, Chris. And with that, our next board meeting will be held at 5:30 on November 19th. The board meeting will start at 5:30, and then we will move into a study session after that. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
We're going to move that by Director La Liberty and seconded by Director Carson that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. All right, motion carries. Thanks. Meeting is adjourned.